impact, enhancing workplace accessibility for all. And we're going to jump into the agenda. This is just a nice way to kind of know what you guys are in for. So when I start a presentation, I always like to explain a little bit more about Goodwill. We'll jump into the EIA program, which is a program that I'm part of, one of the employer coaches. And we'll explain our services a bit more. What is accessibility in the workplace? And kind of explain a bit more about how accessibility really does matter and the long-term effects. And then disabilities in Canada. So let's jump into a little bit more about Goodwill. So Goodwill is a social enterprise providing individuals with disabilities the opportunity to enhance their lives through meaningful employment. So here in Alberta, we are committed to supporting people with disabilities by finding meaningful employment. And so a big thing that helps us be able to have these programs is by you donating to our thrift stores and shopping at our thrift stores. Those funds go right back into our programs and can really help people with disabilities find sustainable employment. Another thing I'd like to highlight is about the sustainability of Goodwill and how we always try to upcycle and recycle all products that do come in. So our goal is to keep everything out of the landfill. So now we'll jump into the EIA program. So EIA stands for Employer Inclusion Accelerator Program. It's a mouthful, that's why we say EIA, but just if you're ever wondering what that means, that's what it means. So I'm one of the employer coaches in this program. And really the program here is to work with employers and help to educate about being inclusive within the workplace. And we meet you where you're at. So it doesn't have to start way at the top of kind of what seems like a big mountain. It's more about that education piece, and we work with you. Now, there are different services that we offer. And again, you can pick and choose kind of what works for you and where you're at within your company and what you want to focus on. So kind of to explain those a bit more, we've got coaching for employers. What that means is it could be one-on-one coaching, it could be a bit of guidance, some clarification. Sometimes you just might want to ask those questions that you don't know how to ask. So we're here to help you with that. We can also come in and kind of identify those gaps that you might not see, have that outside perspective. We've also got community engagement. So what that means is really helping with hiring fairs. We can also help with networking events with you, connecting with resources. I kind of like to say we're a bit of a library or a hub of resources because we are out there in the community, we are networking, and through that we have a lot of partnerships. So we definitely can connect you with those, and we can also help connect you kind of to learning more about government and government grants and funding and information. Now we've got hiring support as well. So hiring support might mean job descriptions, reviewing and pre-screening resumes, helping with like inclusive interview questions. Again, a lot of this can be catered to your needs. We work with you for 6 months, and the goal is, again, to make that one-on-one kind of support plan that works for you, because every person, every organization is going to be different. We've also got policy reviews here and optimizations. So that's us looking at kind of your onboarding system, a bit more about that first week that somebody starts a job. That can be quite crucial. So we look at that and see what are some things that can be changed, what are the things that you're doing really great at, and we can kind of maybe emphasize that a bit more. Then we've also got training for the team. Now this can be done virtually as well as in person or both. And our training is really focused on inclusion and disability. Again, when I say disability, I also mean mental health, depression, anxiety. So we have a variety of different topics we can talk about. And again, if there's something that we don't have and you see something that you might want to learn more about, we can try and create a presentation around that. So now that all of that fun stuff is out of the way, I'm going to jump into the presentation. Again, if any of this is an interest for you, stay till the end. You'll see our contact information and definitely reach out. So what is accessibility in the workplace? So we've got physical accessibility, technology accessibility, and attitudinal accessibility. I think I said that word right. So we are here to talk about accessibility in the workplace. And sometimes when you hear that, the first thing you might think of is maybe elevators or ramps or like accessible parking, but it can go a lot deeper and there's a lot more to it. And it can be small things that really make big changes. So just to give a bit more explanation here, so physical accessibility really is something that ensures within the workplace. So under the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, it's an employer's obligation to have an accessible workplace. And this means for applicants and employees to all employee facilities and within the business. So again, with some of these architectural like changes that you might be doing, there are the possibility for tax credits or deductions to offset the cost. But typically, they say that the cost is quite minimal and the long term effects are huge and worthwhile. So then we'll go into technology accessibility. So it's an important component of disability inclusion. And a big thing with technology accessibility is that there are tools out there to really help people to excel, whether you have a barrier or not. So sometimes it's really smart to look at that and invest in those because everyone can use them. And then we've got attitudinal awareness. So negative attitudes and stereotypes about disability can really hinder inclusion. So we need to be aware about the biases that we have and what we're bringing into the workplace and what we really don't know. So next, we're going to jump into the 4 key barriers to employment and retention. So we've got biases in the hiring process. So as I mentioned before, we all have kind of our own biases that we might not be aware of. And it's something to think of too within the hiring team is when you're interviewing someone and you have your own unconscious biases, how is that affecting the interview process? So really be aware of your own attitudes and biases that you're bringing in. There is also fear of negative judgment and repercussions. So employees with disabilities often carry multiple fears related to work. These fears can include being ridiculed and essentially underestimated. So there's also the fear that their disability can cause negative effects on, let's say, your annual reviews or being promoted. There was a report that was done by ADA, and it reviewed that individuals with disabilities felt that they were never going to move up within a role or get a leadership role. I really want you to think about that because I know for myself, when I'm working, I have that passion, but I also know that I have growth within my work. And think about if you were limited and didn't have that, and how is that going to affect you coming to work and your efforts? So really keep that in mind. Now we've got lack of accessibility in the workplace. So from hiring to performance reviews, all of this across the life cycle within employment gets affected. So for example, electronic job boards, how can we make that a bit more accessible? And maybe that is on those job postings, you're going to write something about accommodations and who somebody can reach out to, already have that in place so that individual doesn't have to right away self-identify. Now we've got unwillingness to provide reasonable accommodation. So sometimes I find like the word accommodations can sound really daunting, and it doesn't have to. Think about it as, taking a step to really make that job work long-term for somebody as well as within the company. So there was a study done as well that showed that several employers did not hire individuals that had a disability because of the fear of accommodations. And one thing I do want to highlight is, being a client of EIA, we can really help you better understand accommodations and how they can be small accommodations and simple changes that really help to really retain your new hires as well. So next, we're going to jump into a video and then we'll chat a little bit about it after. So let's see if the sound works and we'll jump into that. And here we go.
During a meeting of diversity and inclusion professionals hosted by the Department of Labor's Office of Disability Employment Policy, accessibility experts from Microsoft, T-Mobile, and Disability In shared how their organizations are tackling the issue of accessibility in their products and services. Jenny Fleury is Microsoft's Chief Accessibility Officer.
We essentially do it because this is an enormous segment. Our employees, our customers, if we don't make our products accessible, we're eliminating people from using everything Microsoft, whether that's a Xbox game or PowerPoint. I think you've also got to think about accessibility like a business, which means that you need to manage, measure, and communicate it. We definitely have a lot of things that are now foundational in place that have just become part of how we run that business. Every employee takes training on accessibility. Every employee, it's mandatory. We have standards that have to be adhered to for every product, website, event, building, anything that we do. And trust me, I really carefully manage that. And those are reported to the board on a quarterly basis. Looking at it as an ecosystem, you've got to have leadership support. You've also got to have bottoms-up support, and you've got to have a strong community.
When Sprint merged with T-Mobile, it was the perfect time to put a renewed emphasis on accessibility. Claudia Gordon is T-Mobile's Senior Accessibility Strategist. She is signing in American Sign Language, which an interpreter is translating into spoken English.
We're a very large, decentralized company, 75,000 employees all over the United States. So the company recognized that and created my role to help coordinate accessibility across the entire enterprise. Be it HR functions, be it customer-facing employees, interaction with customers, digital accessibility, etc. So just making sure that my role, Senior Accessibility Strategist, fosters more inclusion in our work culture. We're also providing strategy and direction for the entire company now going forward.
People who attended the meeting had an interest in learning more about accessibility. Only about a third of attendees' companies or organizations have a Chief Accessibility Officer or a similar role. Fleury, Gordon, and Disability In's Jeff Wiesel shared practical advice on how to advance accessibility work in organizations and build support so it's sustainable.
And I think that's really one of the key roles with a leadership role in accessibility, whatever it's called at a company, is to be that source of guidance and leadership to bring everyone together along on the journey and to wipe out the silos and to just constantly be sharing, this is important, this is why we're doing this, I think is the critical role with the accessibility leadership.
We can't let perfect be the enemy of good. For example, you can't hold off on hiring individuals with disabilities until everything internally is perfect. I would say actually the opposite is true. Bring on people with disabilities, put them through that onboarding process, because that will force you to recognize your vulnerabilities and your pain points. You will then have to deal with those pain points. You know, it can't be a fire drill where every day there's fires and you're in reactive mode. That's part of setting the stage with this brand new merged company. We need to get ahead of the game. We need to be more proactive. We need to offer the best experience for both our employees and our customers.
Essentially today, my team consists of different functional areas. So I do have a technical gang of experts, technical in terms of websites, apps, AI, innovation. They run our grant program, as well as working with Xbox, Windows, Office, Cloud, all of our different, in the hub and spoke model. So I have some engineers. I also have some folks that are customer facing and can have great conversations with customers, because often we find people are not aware of accessible features that may empower them that are just built into products. So we have those daily conversations with customers. I have a support team the Disability Answer Desk that is all about fielding questions from customers. By the way, that's not just folks who are picking up the phone. I also have a direct video sign language for our deaf customers, and that handles about 13 to 15,000 calls a month. And then aside from that, I have folks that are really focused on how we can advance inclusion, working on hiring and different internal processes and procedures. And in fact, some of the accommodations team sits on my crew as well. Be patient. This does take time. I'm sitting here with the privilege of 6 years in this role and this team, 6 years of evolution. I've still got a ridiculous amount still to do, and you know, we've got another round of change. We changed this year to focus on the disability divide and more societal issues. So I think, you know, be patient and change it, but really make sure that it's what works for your organization, your company, and your industry.
The principles of dedication and accountability will work for both large and small companies. This video is fully funded by the U.S. Department of Labor's Office of Disability Employment Policy.
Awesome. So I hope this video definitely gave you some food for thought and really gave you an opportunity to think about what was said. I mean, there's a lot of good takeaways that I got from that. And I think the big one is be patient. It takes time, as well as, you know, you're never going to get it right. It's never going to be perfect. And so, you know, to start hiring individuals with disabilities and learn from that. I mean, I think there are the biggest experts. Individuals with disabilities daily are dealing with barriers, and they can help to support your onboarding system and let you know what works and doesn't work. And I think if you even think about when you hire a typical person, the onboarding experience might never be right for that person. So really just think about that. And I think hopefully you got some takeaways from that. So we'll not do the video again. So why is disability in the workplace necessary? So 1 in 10 Canadians has a learning disability as well as a neurological disability. So neurological means the brain does not typically operate the same way a typical person might. So you'll see here in this graphic, there's 24% of Canadians that have mobility, vision, hearing disabilities or challenges. 47% have a relationship or know somebody with a disability. 30% consider accessibility when deciding to, you know, partake in a business. 21% would support a certified accessibility business more often. I think another thing to highlight too is disability we're all at some point in our life going to face. Sadly, we're all at some point going to age. I definitely have started the wrinkle cream already. But really think about that. You know, as we age, we need additional supports. I mean, I know for myself, I need a standing desk now. I didn't need that a couple of years ago. And the standing desk helps, you know, with my back. So we already, you know, need accommodations for ourselves, and probably already on your workforce, people need accommodations. So keep that in mind as well. So now we're going to jump into how accessibility is everyone's responsibility. So think about it from a human resources perspective. So they lead efforts by ensuring accessibility is integrated with that recruitment process and hiring process. And then we jump into the leadership role. You know, this leadership really helps to establish that workplace, the culture, and brings that within. And then we've got the supervisor. So supervisor addresses day-to-day things, really hears and sees what accessibility needs might need to be there and what reasonable accommodations can happen. And then also there's the employee. So it's not just from, you know, top, it's also bottom up. And so I think as employees too, it's important to express our needs as well. So now we've got disabilities in Canada. So 6.2 million adults are living with a disability. It's estimated that over 850,000 people with disabilities in Canada are unemployed despite being able to and willing to work. So just definitely resonate with that for a second. So how to make more accessible work environments in 8 steps. I wish it was that simple though, and you could just follow these 8 steps and you've got it. But again, it's not that simple. We're constantly learning and evolving, but I just tried to break it down a little bit more in a tangible way. So one thing is not all disabilities are visible. So 30% of the workforce has a disability and they're not disclosing this. So this can be hidden disabilities like hearing loss, chronic pain, fatigue disorders, cerebral palsy, and then it can also be neurological. So you've got autism, ADHD, OCD, anxiety, depression. So definitely think about that. And to create an inclusive environment, you're going to need to do things differently. So this means investing in tools that people need to be able to do their job more successfully. And I think it's also important to celebrate the differences. Number two, so access your immediate needs. Now, again, you can't, Rome wasn't built in a day, right? So where are you at as an organization and where do you need to focus first? So really look at that and start there. Next, increase applicant accessibility. So if your job application system is online, really think about how somebody with a disability would have an opportunity to apply. What are some things you can do to help alleviate that stress and make it less stressful? I think I mentioned earlier, just having a statement at the bottom of who somebody can email so that they can kind of prepare that interview and that interviewer is prepared and knows kind of how the interview might go on both parties. Offer accessible tools. So accessibility isn't just about, adding a wheelchair ramp. We also need to think about it through technology, and there's a lot out there. So maybe think about, different lighting, color-coded keyboards, different software, again, standing desks, different chairs. Maybe it's even one of those like exercise balls that's going to help somebody to sit on. So there's several different things and they can be minimal cost as well. So 5, I think the big thing is really starting that training process. I think it was mentioned in the video earlier that Microsoft, everybody that gets hired starts with, disability inclusion training. We all also need a little bit of a tune-up and a bit of, kind of relearning. So I think, having some monthly trainings in there as well. And again, this is something that EIA can help support with too, and it's free. So I always like to highlight that. And then number 6, so, really enlist in experts. So there's a lot of organizations out there that can help with inclusion and disability. One of those, again, being EIA, but also think about the people that are already on your team. Think about individuals that have disabilities working on your team. They are the experts. So really rely on them. Let those be your allies and ask them what they see that needs to be worked on. So 7, I think it's important that you're always staying update and, reviewing your policies. Things constantly change. And I definitely know that with, like the texting lingo. I'm always out of date with that. But I think it's important to keep up to date and definitely review policies when you can. And then 8, really understand that you'll never be done. And so I think be patient, be compassionate, and understand that, as well as with accessibility, you always want to be evolving, so you never want to be done. So with that, we're going to jump into creating an inclusive environment remotely. So COVID definitely highlighted this. We got a lot more jobs that work remotely, the value as well in doing that hybrid model. And so how do you create an inclusive environment remotely? And sometimes you might think, you don't need to because it is remotely, but it is important that you're still creating that inclusive environment when an individual is working remotely. So demonstrate vulnerability and empathy. So encourage open sharing and support among the team. I think it's really important to do emotional check-ins. Sometimes it can be quite isolating working at home. There's positives as well, but it's good to always check in. Ask about people's needs, acknowledge them, and tailor actions accordingly. So, definitely share your own needs, and that opens up your colleagues and employees to also share their needs. I think it's also important to keep in mind to have sometimes shorter meetings. When we do online meetings, sometimes it can get a bit longer, and keep in mind how that can be mentally draining as well. Build space for diversity, perspective, and encourage greater participation. So I think definitely within meetings, it's sometimes nice to make sure that everybody has a chance to talk, as well as, throughout the week, maybe you want to pair up different employees together so that you're having that interaction piece. Make time for structured remote team building and networking. So there's a lot of apps out there and websites where you can do some like online fun trivia. I definitely remember doing some of that during COVID with some friends too online. So definitely bring that into the workplace. It's a great way to get to know staff better and also build that inclusive environment. Encourage team members to set individual inclusion commitments and motivations. So share, what you're doing so far to help with inclusion and kind of open that conversation. And I think also promote inclusion as well is a really great thing to help with that communication piece. So now we're going to jump into really about how there's the benefits with creating an accessible workplace. And there is a lot. So one thing is reach more customers. So one in 5 Canadians have disabilities. So think about that. That means that your customers that are working with you, coming into your shops and everything, they have disabilities. So how can you also make your space inclusive for them? As well as how would it see for a customer that has a disability to see somebody in your organization with a disability? So definitely keep that in mind. It's said that this is a 55 billion market that isn't being utilized at all. Encourage innovation. So implement accessibility policies and practices like employee accommodations, flexible schedules. All of these little changes do make a difference. And then we've got access a larger talent pool. So only 59% of people with disabilities in Canada are employed despite being qualified. So create an accessible work environment, widens your talent pool, also allows for higher qualified people to be able to have a job. Again, attract the right team. So what you put out there is kind of what you get, that whole energy piece that we say. And so modify your workplace also improves, the reputation and the talent that you attract. You'll build a talent team that fits your company and culture and share similar values. 70% of job seekers really look for inclusion and diversity. So keep that in mind too, that the job seeker is also looking for this. I'm going to jump into a little bit more about government grants. This can be a big one, and it's nice to talk about too, because some things that you're implementing, there are ways to kind of offset that. Again, keep in mind, there's going to be different kind of criteria and times, but we'll just break down kind of some of the popular ones. So we've got the Enabling Accessibility Fund, which is EAF. So what this is, it provides funding for projects within Canadian communities and workplaces for more accessibility for people with disabilities. Then we've got disability-related employment support, so DRES. And so this pays and helps support Albertans with barriers. And it's broken down into 3 categories. So there's job search, there's workplace support, and educational support. So to qualify for all of these 3, you're going to have to explain a bit more about your situation, your criteria to see that you meet this, as well as there's different times throughout the year when you can apply for these. And then it's also important to keep in mind that some things can also be a tax deduction. So definitely keep that in mind. If you are interested in this, definitely reach out to us. This is something EIA can help you with. Again, we have partners. We can help connect you kind of to see where you can take advantage of these grants. So we'll jump into a little bit of tips for Goodwill. So one thing Goodwill is good with is the commitment to being inclusive and sharing the vision with your team. So definitely be open, share this within your team, motivate it within your team. We've got identified barriers and opportunities for improvement. I think we're always going to have opportunities for improvement, and it's great to always kind of, throughout the year, have a little check, have a little look and see where you're at. 3, choose the right resources, support, and education. I think education is the big thing. And to really not be afraid to ask questions and learn more. That's how we expand our capacity. 4, set small, achievable goals to stay motivated. I know for myself, especially New Year's resolution, I'll have these big goals and it doesn't get done. So definitely start with the small, achievable ones and just go from there. And then 5, continue to grow. We're always growing. So now that brings us to the end of our presentation, where you get to ask me all your questions and I hopefully can answer them. Definitely take a photo of this page here if you'd like, or if you're a fast writer, write it down. This is our email as well as our Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. So definitely reach out to us if anything that I'm saying about EIA interests you or you have any questions about what I've talked about.